Hey everyone, it's Tim Ballasty. Just wanted to give you an overall recap of what exactly happened yesterday in Asheville when it came to our severe weather, our strong storms, the damaging winds, and yes, even the tornado that we are now all well aware of. I'm beginning to hear some stories about the storms came out of nowhere, um, but in the world of meteorology, we don't really ever like to hear that because the storms didn't just come out of nowhere. There was prediction, there was forecasting involved. And as you can see, which I'll show you right now, some of the maps or the early forecasts that were put out earlier in the day before the thunderstorms actually even developed. So I'll start out with the SPC, the Severe Prediction Center. I'll move over to what they put out, which is called the convective outlooks, and then they put out some watches, and then we'll get to what I was following and tracking as the day or as the afternoon evolved on Tuesday afternoon and the evening. And then, of course, at the end, I'll take a look at some of the videos that we now have of what transpired. So first off, let's kick it off with the Storm Prediction Center and the convective outlook. As you look here, this yellow area represents the one of the risk levels involved with the convective outlook. So it was a slight, as they call it, a slight in terms of the potential for severe weather. But overall, when we look at the Storm Prediction Center, slight doesn't always just mean slight. It actually means, oh, there's a genuine, legitimate chance at severe weather today. If thunderstorms develop, there's a decent chance that some of those storms are going to become damaging or even destructive. And when you move into some of what we call them, the probability or the categorical stuff, we look at the tornado aspect. And yes, they actually had an area outlined, as you can see in the brown area. Now it's north of Buncombe County, it's north of western North Carolina, but there was potential for a greater chance of tornadoes developing to our north. Of course, you could almost extend that farther south now because we saw what unfolded yesterday. But again, the potential was there. The Storm Prediction Center then put out a severe thunderstorm watch at around 1:15 yesterday, Tuesday afternoon. And that thunderstorm watch went all the way until 8 in the evening. And as we now know, those storms that we dealt with yesterday, that the timeline of events really began around 6:20, 6:30 in the afternoon and continued well into 7 and then even 7:15 in the evening for our area, Asheville. Now, when you look at when things got interesting for me, let me move my graphic over a little bit. This is when I put out my first, I like to call them pulses. They're little posts that I put out during the course of this event. And my first one came at 4:30 in the afternoon. I looked on my radar app, Radar Scope, and I noticed, as you can see there, well north of Asheville, getting into even far northeastern Tennessee, I saw lots of thunderstorms. Not only did I see thunderstorms, but I saw a tremendous amount of lightning already and the active warnings. And that kind of piqued my interest immediately. I saw in the yellow, you see a severe thunderstorm warning, and then embedded within the actual severe thunderstorm warning, there was a tornado warning, and then there was actually a tornado warning farther east there, as you can see at the top of that map. Now, as I move into time, and I move over to 5:35 in the evening on Tuesday, late afternoon, that's when things started to get even more interesting. And I noticed that earlier we had this kind of discombobulated area of thunderstorms, and whether it was going to make it, as you can see, let me point it this way, if you make it all the way into Asheville, it was tough to figure that out because the storms weren't very, let's say, coagulated. They weren't fully, the extent and the coverage of them wasn't very extensive. But then you move in an hour later, you can say, oh, okay, not only have the storms become a little bit more concentrated, but they're now they're a little aiming a little bit more closer to Asheville. And so as I look at my radar, I'm wondering, okay, are these storms going to propagate southward into our area? And that was the first time around that 5:30 time period when I'm like, okay, I think we're in business here. And as you can see, there's more severe thunderstorm warnings too. My next pulse was put out about 30 minutes later, and things just went bonkers here, as you can see. A lot more coverage of thunderstorms. The lightning was tremendous, widespread lightning, constant lightning. And you can see things were going off in Hot Springs, and things were becoming much more interesting around the Mars Hill area. And Weaverville was basically on the doorstep at this point at 6 o'clock for the thunderstorms. And then about 10 minutes later, I thought, okay, I see this map. This is called reflective. Let's look at the velocity. Velocity tells us where there's a spin in the atmosphere. And when I looked at that at 6:15, I was like, oh boy, that's a tornado. And I think tornado warnings were in place at this point for Marshall and Mars Hill. Which brings us to this footage. I believe this is around the Marshall. No, yeah, this is around Bailey Mountain in the Mars Hill area. This is actually north of Mars Hill. And this is a very interesting video footage. And to me, when I look at this, I see that looks like a tornado to me. Now, is it a tornado that's actually touching the ground, or is it a funnel cloud? I can't tell. But that looked pretty legitimate to me at that point. I didn't see that until Wednesday morning. But this lines up pretty well with what I was seeing on radar at that time. And you fast forward about another 15 more minutes. And now what was in Mars Hill has now made its way southward into the Weaverville area. And we got more video footage. This is, let's see where this came from. I'm not exactly sure, but I know this is around the Weaverville area. In this, you don't actually see a funnel or a tornado. You see more of a wall cloud in this. Now, could there be a tornado embedded within or extending from that wall cloud? Absolutely. What happens in this time is that the rain shaft becomes basically a visible obstruction. You just can't see within the actual rain shaft what's going on behind these clouds and behind the rain. Could there be a tornado still active? Yes, definitely. And that's where I marked that spot with an X there, where the potential circulation was happening. And now what happened as we got to around 6:30 and 6:40, that circulation, thankfully, as it made into my area, into the Hall Creek area of East Asheville, that circulation became a little bit more weak. And you get this circulation that was probably still ongoing, but instead of being located at the surface, that circulation probably went back up into the clouds, and there was likely a circulation up above, just over my head at around 6:40 as the funnel cloud, or at least the circulation, moved forward. And again, real quick, as we moved another about 5 more minutes later, as those storms moved through East Asheville, there was actually more circulation potential and maybe even tornado or funnel cloud potential to our east that happened just to the north of Swannanoa. It's interesting. I'm not sure. I have no truth or no ground truth that actually occurred, if there was a funnel cloud or tornado north of Swannanoa as it came towards both Swannanoa and Black Mountain. But the signature was still there on radar. Now, as I look at this radar, this is a look at these storms as they made their way through Mars Hill, Weaverville, Woodfin, and into Asheville and East Asheville, and eventually into Black Mountain and Montreat. What's interesting, what you see here, is I want to point out this arcing. So it's around this boundary right here, this arc, that we had these potential spin-ups of tornadoes, one over Weaverville that may have propagated southward or southeastward into East Asheville and Hall Creek, and the other one that may have perhaps some more potential circulation right around this area. But what's to my eye, when I look at this on radar, I'm seeing what's potentially happening is a bowing out, is what we call, or the complex of thunderstorms bowed out, which is this a force of energy or this force of wind at the surface has made its way from up above and then made its way south or lower to the ground, to the surface, and then rushed outward. And then that's what you see here, where the strongest winds are likely centered around, let's say, North Asheville, East Asheville along 240 here, and then farther east along I-40 and then towards Black Mountain. So I think most of our wind damage, although on a very micro scale or very isolated potential, there was some damage from tornadoes, but a lot of our wind damage likely came from this bowing out and the wind energy that rushed forward, and we probably saw winds of excess of 50, maybe even 60 miles an hour with this the structure of this storm here, this bow echo structure. So I think that's what likely occurred in our area. We saw much more wind damage and not necessarily organized tornado damage. I'm going to quickly look to see if, this is a really cool view of the storms as they made their way. Here's Asheville right here, as you can see. And this is an area of it looks like drone footage from Tim Reeves. A lot of this has a structure of I'm not sure what the best way to put it, but it's more of a shelf cloud structure, I guess you could say. I think more of the tornado energy or the tornado circulation is actually what happened well east. So in the distance, beyond these mountains, these ridge tops, into the Hall Creek Valley and to Chun's Cove Valley is where we perhaps potentially saw some more of this rotating nature. Although even if you look closely, you see a little bit of rotating structure happening right there. So as these storms move through, there was a lot going on. Lots of the small little spin-ups that were likely happening, especially aloft, and occasionally perhaps made its way to the surface. But so there you go. There you have it. Really active day. By the way, something interesting. I don't know if this is true or not, but supposedly this is the first tornado warning for Asheville City proper since 1999, 27 years ago. I was not aware of that it had been that long since we actually had a tornado warning for the city. But it's rare to get a tornado warning, and it's rare to actually get a tornado, an actual observed tornado, or even one that's being observed on radar. Suffice to say, my two thoughts or my 2 cents, I think there was some spin-ups that happened. I think there was certainly some tornado touchdowns, most likely around that Marshall-Mars Hill area into just north and east of Weaverville, and then eventually perhaps maybe some tornado evidence as it's made its way to East Asheville. But I think it was at that time when the structure actually lifted right back up into the clouds. And I think where we're going to see any evidence of a tornado, it's going to be in this Weaverville, Mars Hill area to our north. All right, there you have it. This is a pretty long video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'm going to try to post this on Substack and perhaps on my other social media channels. All right, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, guys. I thought you might find that interesting. Some of the observations that I saw in real time, and then looking back as a armchair quarterback, what exactly was involved with their thunderstorms yesterday. All right, take care.